the dawn of the 1980s, Stephen Morris was at a crossroads. For the past couple of years, he'd been drumming with the seismically influential Joy Division, his exacting beats occupying the darkened middle ground between Kraftwerk and the Sex Pistols. But now, with his band having met a tragic conclusion, he faced a decision. Did he fight back against the new drum machine technology he feared might make him obsolete, or did he embrace it to repaint the British musical landscape all over again? Stephen Morris was born in 1957 in the English town of Macclesfield, the same place as future Joy Division frontman Ian Curtis, who actually went to the same school as Morris, albeit a couple of years above. 2 decades later, and some 15 miles to the north, two friends by the name of Bernard Sumner and Peter Hook attended a Sex Pistols gig in Manchester. Taken by the band's destructive anti-hero allure, they placed an advert for a singer, to which Ian Curtis responded. He was hired and Joy Division was born. Or rather, Warsaw was born. That was the band's first name, and it took a while for them to even settle on a lineup. Mason was replaced before their first gig in May 1977, with that drummer leaving in place of another who himself was sacked before long. When Sumner, Hook and Curtis advertised for another drummer, only one person responded: Stephen Morris. This definitive iteration of the band, now renamed as Joy Division, released their debut EP, An Ideal for Living, in the summer of 1978, with the British punk of recent history the primary influence. But with that initial onslaught of punk already beginning to abate, the band started pushing towards a new sound alongside fellow British bands Susie and the Banshees, Wire, The Fall and others. It was still deeply rooted in punk, but it created itself from less. More space, more refinement, same intensity. It was loosely described in the music press as post-punk, and with their debut album, the band created one of the undisputed classics of the genre. Unknown Pleasures, released in June 1979, showcased the band's perfect balance. Sumner's guitars gave both an icy atmosphere and sharp bite, while Hook's bass lines were strikingly melodic. Curtis delivered ink-black poetry with a spectral baritone, while Morris gave the whole thing a driving force. His playing was unfailingly precise, largely avoiding intricate fills in favour of uncompromising beats. We'll unpack all the influence that fed into the sound of his Joy Division era drumming later, but listening to Unknown Pleasures, it's immediately apparent just how crucial Morris was to defining that sinister, seductive sound, creating an all-pervading atmosphere with such restraint.
These sensations make me feel the pleasures of a normal man.
Just over a year later, the band released their second and final album, Closer. It's a fascinating first step towards the synthesized sounds that would fuse with Morris's playing in the years to come. It's also the album that Morris has named as one of his finest achievements behind the kit. Both those things make sense with a track such as Isolation. But while Closer was the sound of a band striding into exciting new realms, behind the scenes Joy Division was at crisis point. Curtis was desperately unwell, in the grip of depression and epilepsy, which had put an unbearable strain on both his professional and personal life. On the eve of the band's first ever North American tour, Curtis took his own life. Bound by an agreement to cease Joy Division if any of the members ever left, Morris, Sumner and Hook retired the name, but in the midst of catastrophe decided to carry on as a band, joined by Morris's girlfriend and future wife Gillian Gilbert on keys and guitar. The four-piece, now called New Order, released the song Ceremony as their first single. It is very much a bridge between Joy Division and New Order. The lyrics were written by Curtis before his passing, although they were performed by Sumner, who had now taken over vocals. But at the same time, Ceremony was a sound of change, of New Order's bright beginning breaking through the dark clouds of Joy Division's end. As Morris told Dig in 2023, it was something uplifting and, well, up. It felt like the start of something new, or different at least. The band released their debut album Movement in the winter of 1981, which drew heavily on the sound of Joy Division. But in the next couple of years, profound changes occurred within New Order. A visit to New York City and its pulsating club scene introduced the band to the hedonistic digital wonders of electro and Italo disco. And in 1982, the band's label, Factory Records, opened the legendary Manchester nightclub, the Hacienda, a soon-to-be sacred site of the UK's dance music awakening. New Order were heavily involved in the club. In fact, their music was a huge contributor to the Hacienda's finances, and with their inspirations now transplanted from punk venues to nightclubs, the band's sound changed accordingly. You can hear the early signs of metamorphosis on a single such as Temptation in 1982. With with an even greater evidence on a track from the same year, Prime 586, later renamed Video 586, which was played at the opening of the Hacienda. And then in 1983, the group delivered their magnum opus Blue Monday, and the transformation was complete. It's not only one of the most important tracks in British music history, inspiring countless artists both in and out of the club scene, but in music generally.
How does it feel to treat me like you do?
Morris was at the heart of all this, with his ever-evolving approach to crafting percussion a vital part of New Order's success. Before we dive into his style and influences, please consider becoming a member of the channel. I've recently revamped the pricings and perks. There's the bronze membership, which is just £1 or roughly $1 a month. If you want to show your support and appreciation, please do consider becoming a member. For this particular tier, the perk is that I can recommend an album for you to listen to. There's also the silver and gold tiers with snazzier perks like a created playlist and even choosing the topic of a future video. Just hit that join button down below for more. Thank you. A lot of Morris's approach makes perfect sense when you consider the drummers he's spoken publicly about admiring. In 2019, when asked by Scottish newspaper The Herald what makes a good drummer, Morris said, "For me, it's just someone who focuses on the song and does a good job without getting too fancy. Early on, you think being fancy is what it's all about, but I soon realized that the drummers I actually liked listening to were the ones who didn't do loads of fills, apart from Keith Moon, who did nothing but fills." Two of the drummers that have often been cited by Morris as big drumming influences are Mo Tucker of the Velvet Underground and Kenny Morris from Susie and the Banshees. Tucker's style was far more simplistic than Kenny Morris's, but both shared a habit of avoiding cymbals, focusing instead on snares and toms. Stephen Morris didn't have quite the same aversion to cymbals, but he certainly never came anywhere close to overusing them, and the focus on toms to create an eerie, almost ritualistic aura is definitely apparent with Joy Division. Check out the tracks Atmosphere and Dead Souls, recorded as part of the same sessions in 1979 and released as A and B sides the following year.
Sit down with due care. Don't walk away.
Krautrock is another big one. Morris has called Jackie Liebzeit of Cannes one of my all-time favourite drummers, while Kraftwerk were played before the band came on stage at Joy Division gigs. And while Morris didn't wholly emulate the motoric style of drumming that came to be associated with those bands, he was clearly influenced by the spirit of precise, unrelenting forward momentum. If you want to learn more about this beat, you can find a video on it in the top right-hand corner now. A perfect example is the wrist-crumbling intensity of transmission, exhibited here in one of Joy Division's few televised performances. Aside from generating dangerous levels of lactic acid, those punishing 16th note hi-hat patterns used for the likes of Transmission would become something of a signature for Morris. You can hear them on Unknown Pleasures with tracks such as Interzone, and with early New Order songs such as Age of Consent.
I'm not the kind that needs to tell you just what you want.
Aside from the metronomic mechanics, the actual sound of Morris's drums was hugely influenced by the man in charge of producing them. Martin Hannett, an in-house producer at Factory Records, insisted on recording Morris's drum parts in individual segments. Snares recorded by themselves, toms recorded by themselves, and so on. It meant that the drum sounds could be manipulated with complete control, giving them an otherworldly air with a feeling of odd disconnection that chimed perfectly with Curtis's lyrics.
And she turned around and took me by the hand and said I've lost control again. And how
Though widely admired now, Hannett's work wasn't always popular. In fact, the decision he took to change Joy Division's sound from that of their live shows, growling, loud and organic, to that spacey studio version was a source of much consternation among the band themselves, who felt that they had lost something elemental. But looking back now, it's clear to see just how crucial Hannett was to the development of Morris, Joy Division and later on New Order. He showed how drum and studio technology could be used to embolden a band's sound rather than neuter it, and how it could open portals to new musical worlds, which is exactly what happened with New Order. Their eyes widened by their dalliances with the New York club scene, the band began to take inspiration from new places. Morris, initially worried that the burgeoning field of drum machine technology could make him obsolete, decided instead to use it to his advantage, which meant artists such as Giorgio Moroder entered his frame of reference. Talking to The Quietus in 2010 about the legendary Italian producer, whose work had fed directly into that New York sound, Morris said, "The thing about Moroder is that he was using sequences, but there's real playing over the top of them. It wasn't like machine music, it has synthesizers and it is robotic, but it's got a disco groove about it." That organic meets electronic sound can be heard on the 1982 New Order single Temptation. And in fact, it was Morris's attempt to recreate one of Moroder's tracks, Our Love by Donna Summer, that led to Blue Monday. Morris was trying to emulate the beat on his Oberheim DMX drum machine, and you can hear some pretty clear similarities on the finished version of Blue Monday. New Order went on to release 10 studio albums over the course of their career, and through various breakups and lineup changes, Morris's percussion remained one of the defining components, whether it was human, machine, or more likely that fascinating space in between. And so there we have it. Where does Morris stand for you among the great drummers of the past 50 years? Let us know in the comments. Thanks so much for watching through to the end. If you've enjoyed this video, then please do remember to like, subscribe, and join. Thank you.